Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Dr. Samitra. Thank you, Mansi and Jamshid. We'll move on to our next discussion panel, which is chaired by Dr. Samitra. The panelists are Larry Cyclix, Mansi Pahma, and Jamshid Nawar. The chairperson is requested to give a brief introductory remark, moderate the discussions, invite questions from the audience, and summarize the discussions at the end of the panel.
Before inviting questions from the audience, I just give two short briefings on these two questions that are there. The first one is, what is the nature of the influence of integral yoga on the field of psychology? What is the nature of the influence of integral yoga on the field of psychology? Now, this question has two broad answers. One, a long-term answer. The long-term answer is this, that psychology is a field which is not held by one theory. It is held by many theories together, and that Sri Aurobindo himself acknowledged. He himself said in one of his early writings, which is published in the essays Divine and Human, that psychology is a field which is held by many theories together. He accepted it as a practical position. But of the many theories, yoga is also one theory that is holding psychology. But integral yoga, what is its influence on the field of psychology, that is unique. That is, if what Sri Aurobindo has said is going to come true, that we are going to have future models of man, that there will be a higher species of human beings, then we have to have a psychology which is supple and flexible to accommodate this thing. You see that we have to have a higher and higher models of man which has been visioned by Sri Aurobindo. If they come up, then you can't have that old psychology. You have to have a psychology which is very open-ended, which is very flexible, which is accommodative of many different levels. And Sri Aurobindo's psychology is very complex, because this our young scholar Manushi was telling Sri Aurobindo's the definition of consciousness. You see that it was at one time, it is pluridimensional. You see that definition. If you repeat the definition again, there are two components in that definition. One, it is at the same time it is pluridimensional, at the same time it is integral. Two components together, so many dimensions, at the same time there is an integral. Science of consciousness, this whole chapter that is there, you will see that these two things are coming out. So this is the long-term gain that we have from integral yoga psychology, integral yoga, which no other what you call theory is able to give just at this present moment. Now, what are the short-term influences? The short-term influences are just now that the integral yoga provides us with a new orientation of the different planes and parts of our being. This is one. This is two. It also integrates what you call. It also integrates two dimensions. You see, when we talk about general psychology, we talk about personality. But Indian yoga talks about both personality and impersonality. They are both dimensions of our being. And integral yoga gives us how to develop these two and integrate them. The impersonality dimension of our being and the personality dimension of our being is a very unique concept which we can give to psychology. The second thing is that it integrates the essence of different systems at different planes of consciousness. You see, all these systems of psychology which are there, they are all talking about partial truths. Now, these partial truths you can place at different levels of a hierarchy, which integral yoga has given. So that is how you can integrate them. And the third thing is, of course, that you can bring in the influence of occultism in psychology, not only to understand things, but the higher occult or the white magic that can be brought into psychotherapy. Actually, that will be brought. In the process, you see that things are moving. I have a firm conviction that higher occultism will be brought in. Otherwise, this psychology will not develop in its therapeutic modality, in its totality. Now the second question is, what are the challenges in applying integral yoga psychology as a therapy? Now it's a very interesting question, very difficult question. You see that if we want to apply integral yoga psychology as a therapy, there are two things that are essential. One is that the psychotherapy, the pursuit of psychotherapy has to be taken as part of a sadhana. You see that it is not a pastime pursuit, it's not just an academic pursuit. It has to be taken, many things can be offered to the divine. Psychotherapy as a subject, as a field can also be offered to the divine. So this is something that can be what we call this application of integral yoga psychology. This application needs to have what you call, you're developing, the therapist developing oneself as a sadhak. The second thing is that you have to have two things also. Not only you have to develop yourself in consciousness, in your inside, but outside you have to be extremely methodical, extremely competent in your clinical expertise. Otherwise you cannot do. For example, I will give you one of the best examples where those who are interested in integral yoga psychotherapy, you can work, that is somatization disorder. Now somatization disorder is a very common illness in psychiatry, but not in psychiatry, in general medicine as a whole, which is what I will tell you. It's a type of disease where you see all around, where people have so many complaints, headache, stomachache, this ache, 100 different complaints, and they go on to different doctors, doing thousands of clinical investigations, hundreds of CT scans, scores of what you call X-rays, this and that, but nothing comes out. Actually, the more you do these investigations, the more the patient becomes worse. See, and this is a very common condition. It's called somatization disorder. You see, we treat them by antidepressants. We don't, in our SSRIs, there's a new generation of antidepressants with which we treat them, and we recognize that these people suffer what they suffer from, not only the disease, but the consequences of so many investigations. This is some of that unwanted, unnecessary medicines. And you see that they are comprising actually 50% of our client population in a doctor's clinic today. And today these people, other people who are today going to allopathy, tomorrow going to homeopathy, next day they are going to Reiki, the other day they are going to astrotherapy, you see. Same people moving to different disciplines, they comprise this somatization disorder. Now this somatization disorder is an excellent field where integral psychotherapy can work, provided you understand, because each person has the problem at different plane of consciousness. If you can work there, you might be using anything. You might be using homeopathy, allopathy, antidepressant, doesn't matter. You understand the core, where the plane of consciousness this person, what conflict he has, and you see, you will have the result. For that, of course, you see, if you don't have that clinical expertise. Some days back, one boy from Odisha who had done his MS in eye, he came to me and he told that I am such a bhakta, I want to take a posting near Jipmar, so I can be close to the ashram. I said, then you'll be working as a doctor? He said, yes. I said, what are you going to offer to the mother? Well, the problem is that I want to be close because I was trained in Shimla. In Shimla, the ophthalmology department doesn't have good medicines. Good instruments. You know that for eye nowadays you need to have very costly instruments running into crores of rupees. So my professional training was not adequate. I told him that, what do you want to give to the mother? As a doctor, you have to train yourself. Go first and have a training there in one place where you can become a very good eye doctor. They don't offer that. So that should be the attitude. Your professional clinical acumen has to be very appropriate. If that doesn't happen, what will happen? You see, a few years back, Dr. Mathai has held a seminar on psychology. Now, there were some people who were practicing yoga therapy. They came and told, if you do yoga, there can be no illness. They came and they were claiming, if you do yoga, there can be no illness. Now, is that possible? When we saw that diagram which I showed you, people who do yoga, what happens, in many of them, the inner being grows very fast. The outer being cannot grow that fast. When the inner being grows very fast and the outer being has not been given that attention, or it cannot grow that fast, wide disparity occurs. And that is why many yogis have big illnesses. You see, you find that many big yogis, they have many big illnesses like cancer. Why they have? Because the inner being grows very fast. Ultimately it happens. When we die, it is the inner being that grows faster. Ultimately that is what it happens. But in practical life, you see what is the danger? When you are practicing integral yoga psychology, then you have to be cautious of each and every plane where the thing acts. you have to be extremely competent. And we don't have that competence, we cannot practice this. Then we will be a sham. You see that people, spiritual pursuits, people who are in any discipline, when they have some power comes in, they become ill. As a psychiatrist, frequently I have to see people from all sorts of spiritual traditions, both Hindu, Muslim, Christian, they were practicing very sincerely something, and that being was not prepared. No? Adhar was not prepared, and suddenly some light comes and they can't hold, and they become ill. So this is a big challenge, that you have to be competent, you have to be master, and you have to know how much you have to give to one. You see that inner being, we can't go all and work at the level of inner being for everyone. Because most of the people, we have to work even in the outer being, there is so much to work. Because in the outer being, there is the mind, body, and the vital, and there are differences between them, there are conflicts between them. So there is so much to work even at the level of the outer being. Only and exception, then when it is ready, then only you can go and shift to work at the inner being. The client has to be ready. So, and your own self has to be ready. So the challenge is, it is a very challenging thing, but the challenge is, of course, that together with sadhana, the professional competence, otherwise what Mother as Sri Aurobindo said, the matter and spirit coming together, that will not happen. So with this, I will ask you if any specific questions, and after that I will tell Larry to give his comments. But if I have any specific questions, especially for Larry and for Manusi, please come up.
This is with regards to equality.
And to Javedji. Because Javedji is identified with SACAR from the beginning, so I left his name.
To anyone who wants to answer.
Jamshedji.
We all see the importance and relevance and need for equality, but with the best of intentions and aspirations, what are our chances of success? Yes.
Chances, if you ask me, 100%. At least in the negative and positive equality. If one makes a sincere affair, but you know, it's a habit not to be equal. It's a habit to get disturbed. And the answer is in the word habit only. If you see the word H-A-B-I-T, first the H goes, so a bit remains. When you remove A, still bit remains. Then B, if you take out, still it remains, and then it goes. So you need to have a lot of perseverance, lot of going after it.
Reducing the chances of it.
Yeah, and slowly it grows. You cannot expect equality to be developed immediately, within a year or so. You have to pursue through this. And the more you become aware of it, the more it will come into you. I think you have to pursue a lot. And this is not only true, this is true for even our spiritual life. I think we don't know whether we will achieve the goal even in this life or which life. But you have to have patience and go on doing it.
But Sri Aurobindo says the first prerequisite for divine works is equality and a desireless state. That's the first thing. Then you start on divine works. So
yes, but it doesn't mean that the other things together may not come. You may be on the path of equality. You may still aspire, you may still go on to the process of rejection, you may even make an effort towards surrender, and even develop faith and other things, all can go together. And slowly the other will help this equality too in the whole process. But if you ask me the chances, it's hard. It will come, but you have to make a sincere effort to it. It also depends on your past karmas, to what an extent your evolution has been.
No, but seriously, I have a serious quest, and with all due respect, I would ask you, you've been studying this subject for so long, you must have made a lot of sincere effort and persevered, but really how much equality have
I achieved? Yeah.
No, because I'm not ridiculing.
Yes. I can understand the sincerity of the question, and I fully accept with all humility, this question is valid.
I want to know if it's possible.
Yes. When you are in the process, what happens is, when you are in the process, a stage comes after sincere effort as if you have achieved everything. And the moment you relax, you feel you lose the equality at once. It will happen. It will happen many times. But it is not important to fall down. Important is once you have fallen to get up and start walking. So you have to make an effort. And especially in this place, or for that matter, all those who are devoted to Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, there is a grace continuously happening. If you aspire sincerely, you will achieve it. Only problem is, if you pray for equality, Mother will give you circumstances which will be really chaotic, and you will have to learn how to control it. And to an equality means she'll give you bashing physically as well as other things. I remember when I was asking for equality, I was looking after the problematic situation of Sri Aurobindo handmade paper, where the unionized problem was at its peak. We have been beaten up, we have been closed in a room without food, water for a day, and we were not allowed to go out, have no contact, and all possible situation came. And I think possibly it was because we wanted equality. She gave you a situation where one can develop. So be confident, it will come, you have to aspire and leave the result to the divine. I hope I have answered your question.
Well, Soumitra, yeah. Well, I have a small clarification of you. Isn't this integral yoga and therapy contradiction in terms? Because if you really understand the meaning of yoga, which we all know, can we really apply it as a therapy? That means ultimately what happens is Mother and Sri Aurobindo were more therapists than anything else. So can we, I mean, I have seen all your examples. That is, you have a knowledge of the consciousness, the superconscious, the inner being, the outer being. You have the knowledge. But you know, the word therapy itself, somehow I don't see it being linked with the word yoga. Because in this real sense that we all know, it's not a, some people have voice yoga, this yoga, I know they misused it. But we, you and me, we know the meaning of yoga. But can we really apply it as a therapy, a short-time treatment? Therapy is a treatment to a particular kind of an ailment or unease or a disease or anything. But what do you think in that?
There are two things. First is that application of Sri Aurobindo's thought in different areas. You see, that was a time when Sri Aurobindo's thought was being pursued by people who were in the branch of philosophy. That was the first group of people. The second group, now we see that Sri Aurobindo is being made to be understood in different fields of application like health, education, psychology, therapy. If we can go to health in general, if we can go to management, if we can go to education, then it can well come in therapy also. You have to see as an application of it, and always you have to differentiate. That's why I said that it has to be under people cannot confuse things. People can't bring that they are people who are doing therapy, will be doing yoga. Certain principles from integral yoga I am applying in therapy. One has to be very clear about it. The second thing is that when I first started integral psychotherapy, there was one compulsion that without our wanting, because we had this idea that how much we will be applying and whether we should apply or not. Even you know that flower remedies we are given, and somebody told me, one very senior ashramite, that flowers were given by the mother as blessings. Why do you use it as therapies? But again, you see that there are the same flowers which mother used, like passiflora, which is used in homeopathy in a certain sense. Mother also gave the name, peace in the nerves, also the same thing mother was giving. But even without our wanting it, counseling groups, especially church-based counseling groups, had already taken up Sri Aurobindo's ideas, and they had distorted it, not because they were willfully they distorted it, but because of ignorance. And they had started applying. When we had that compulsion, I had that compulsion. I have written letters to everybody that we should start doing this work. Otherwise, the whole thing, Sri Aurobindo, will be misinterpreted and put in a very different place. But at this point in time, in psychotherapy, we need a psychology to account behind the psychotherapy. That psychology today has a lot of vacuum, and it can't be filled in unless you have some gems from integral yoga, unless you have something from Sri Aurobindo's thought. So in some way or the other, this will be coming in therapy, and we on our part have to be very careful, make the discrimination that what you were saying, and don't confuse the two terms. Might be we can use some separate terms, separate settings, might we have to use it in different ways.
That's what I mean. You see, what you said in the beginning of your introduction, that this therapist himself has to be a practitioner of yoga and really have achieved something in that. You know, you cannot just apply aspiration, rejection, surrender and say, do that, unless the doctor himself is doing it. Because you see, why my objection to word therapy is, What you said is true, that integral yoga or philosophy has gone into education. Fine, integral education. Or people are trying to get into management. But there is a long-term process. Whereas therapy means I come with an ailment, I want a treatment within 1 week, 10 days, 15 days. So it's a short-term treatment, whereas education or management, it can be over the years, it can take 10 years, that's okay. But the therapy is precisely something I want to be relieved of my ailment within next day or next 20 days. So can you really apply those principles for this kind of a short-term treatment? Is it really successful to do that?
So this is something where we have to discriminate. I think this is an ongoing work we have to do. But whether we want it or not, just at this point in time, because of the vacuum in the world of thought, so people will be trying to draw in things, and they can make a mess. So I think that from our side, we have to go forward also.
I like to say, I'm standing here to congratulate Manishi because you have presented a good paper. That's actually the point that Anand is also trying to point out, and that's you are on the right direction. So this is the paper. This soul searching has to go on within psychology, because I was a student of Carl Jasper, who wrote a great book on psychopathology, and later, because of that book, he was given a chair in philosophy in Heidelberg. Now, therefore, I have something to say here. One of the greatest problems that comes when we are talking of psychopathology, which Foucault later on also pointed out, what is your concept of madness, or what is your concept of pathology? Because this is very easy. In a classical psychology, it was very clear that anybody who is deviant, who is not going according to the norms of society, was considered to be pathological. But then that was not the case, because we are presupposing. This is where you have also mentioned one or two examples of Van Gogh and other this thing. So therefore, the first question that comes before we offer the solution to the pathology, we have to be very clear what is wrong. Now, and again, therefore, I have to say that don't use Aurobindo for everything. This is a very common sense kind of a thing. Because once our concept is very clear, then we can use the insight of Aurobindo of great help. There's no doubt about that. And then comes the question, which Jasper wrote about this at a very long time back, but then Michel Foucault came out with a very important issue, madness and civilization. He says, what is our concept of madness? The West, which is supposed to be the most rational, which has failed to define mind, but then started so many prescriptions, curation of mind, curing of the mind. So therefore, he wrote a history. What was the treatment given to madness from that day to this? But then all looks like quackery. This is what he said. When the Descartesian division came between matter and body, the therapeutic that was given in the France at that point of was fumes and spirits. When the blood, thickening of the blood theory came, they started drenching the mad people. Then as we came, this is one of very important. That was the book for which he became very famous, where he pointed out the way we are treating the mad shows not actually what madness is, but our madness to approaching this problem. This is the point that I wanted to make. And one more important thing that I wanted to tell you, what is wrong if something cancer happens to a great person? Why do you think that it is some kind of a punishment or anything like that?
It's not.
Therefore, body is going to die anyway. Nobody can live for 100 years. So if a great rishi or a spiritual, doesn't mean that if he goes by cancer or goes by anything wrong with that. It doesn't show that it is outer or inner anything. And first of all, these divisions that have come in psychology are questionable. Even when everybody in psychology has become conscious, we have divided these realms only for the purpose of method, but they are not hardcore.
No, but that is Aurobindo one of the most unique contributions to the world of psychology, the concept of inner being or subliminal being. That's a very unique contribution. Larry has his comments. Please. Before we end, Larry has his comments.
Yes, we have 2 or 3 questions. Please keep the questions brief because we are running short of time.
I just wanted to comment on the question that came from there about the success of equanimity. I think if you keep your eyes open and your antennae open, you'll find in the ashram there are several people who actually have achieved a considerable degree of equanimity. In fact, I'm always surprised, well, I shouldn't say I'm surprised, but that strikes one. And so it is not, you'll find examples here, if you look for them, who really have achieved a very remarkable degree of equanimity.
Yes, Larry.
Yeah, with regard to Anand Reddy, can I speak?
Should I begin?
Yeah, this was to add to Anand.
Okay, I'll just make a quick comment. Also regarding Ananda Reddy's question, I think that there's two different sides to the issue that shouldn't be confused. There's, on one side, there's, asking the patient to develop in certain ways to open up their inner being or something. So that's a more difficult aspect. But there's also the side of the therapist. And I think that the therapist can also act as a channel, let's say, of the divine force of the mother. And to the extent that they themselves are centered in their inner being, and to the extent that they can transmit and radiate that presence of the mother in the therapeutic session, that is a key factor that can play a role no matter, what situation the patient is in. And then if that can also be accompanied to some extent by orienting that patient mentally or vitally or however towards their own inner being, then they can also become more receptive to that influence that is coming through the therapist.
Yes.
Okay, with regard to the question on RYP as therapy, I just wanted to add that it is actually applicable as a therapy, Anand. And it can be taken safely as instant or in a few days, and it wouldn't be wrong. In fact, it is required that this is applied in psychology also to give us result as a therapy. My own experience as an eye doctor, mother had given this message: the more the mind is quiet, the more the sight is good. And we were able to treat diseases like glaucoma, which the normal science of ophthalmology does not permit us to claim. But there were phenomenal results achieved, as well as for retinal detachments. That is one area. And in my recent consultation work, I have come across 2 cases or 3 cases wherein, the teenager part, they were almost on the verge of committing suicide. And I don't know, it's not a tall claim. It's a proud moment to say that a few words of Sri Aurobindo and a few directions setting their conflicts in place, there was immediately like a sunshine, and the conflict just vanished. And within 2-3 days, he said, yeah, I don't want to commit suicide. And then we have, with our own experience, like whenever there is a heartbeat in augmentation, you read Savitri. And just about in 15 minutes or half an hour, and it has been told that there's a power in action. And then the fourth thing is, if the IY psychology is taken on a mental plane as concepts to be understood, it does not translate itself in vibrational power. But when a practitioner of IY practices this as a sadhana, and then the outflow from him comes out into sort of, explaining the psychological aspects, the communication converts itself into vibrational therapist formulations. Thank you.
I think it's tea time, and we finish with the aspiration of sunshine, what he talked about on our emerging fields. of integral yoga psychology and psychotherapy, so that we can give something. You have to admit that Sri Aurobindo was compassionate for us too, not only for philosophers like you, but compassionate for us, that we psychologists will be coming to him in large numbers. So let us hope that the sunshine comes to us also. Thank you. We'll break for tea.